Welcome back to another edition of the Hart2Heart Podcast. And my guest today is a returning guest, Jen Thompson. So Jen is a social worker. She's been amazing. She's helped so many of my patients with various different mental health disorders. So Jen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Well, it's great to have you back on. We had a real good chat the first time. I wanted to have you back on again. I love what you're doing. Since we last chatted, you changed to the sovereign therapist. I think that's a really good move. Kind of jealous that I didn't think myself as a sovereign doctor. I'm not going to steal it on you, don't worry. But so I kind of wanted to start there. Why did you make that change to become the sovereign therapist?
I think it represents so much more of where I am now. Well, I guess there was a few reasons. There's also so many people have exhale in their business name these days. So
that's a good reason.
And sovereign is around freedom, right? It's around personal liberation. It's represents so much more of being independent and operating independent and thinking independently. Being independent in so many different ways. And when we moved to our homestead here, it also represents how we live. So more independence from the food systems as well, because we grow organic, we grow from seed, we have livestock, we have chickens, we have all kinds of animals. So
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it represents so much more than just something so simple, but it represents it as a whole for us. Here living, working here, living here.
So you probably don't have to do as many trips to the grocery store then, hey?
Mike, I think I went this summer. I think I went maybe, did I go once? I've been to the market, maybe once or twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
You literally are living off the land, so to speak.
Yeah. And we preserve all of our food. So, last year we were eating our potatoes into the spring.
That's unreal. Must take a lot of work though, and then a lot of research and how to, be able to manage all that. Like you guys must have, worked really hard at it.
We read a lot of books and watch a lot of YouTube.
Yeah. Well, I think that just speaks to your title though, like sovereign, like you're self-taught. You basically, taught yourself how to live off the land, which is incredible. Most people would not be able to survive without going to the grocery store. That's just the fact.
Yeah, this is ultimate independence. Food security is ultimate independence, and learning to grow something, learning to be self-sufficient that way, knowing that I can take care of myself. It's fucking amazing. It feels really good.
It's awesome. And you sound awesome. You sound like you're in an amazing place, which is awesome to know. And I've seen too, like in addition to, the livestock and stuff that you got some cold plunges out there now and sort of like some, I don't know if they're meditative rooms or that kind of thing, but like, can you maybe walk us through just a little bit more of your setup that you have?
Yeah, sure. We invested in a barrel sauna. And
amazing.
It's a wood burning. It smells beautiful. It's cedar. And then we got a couple of plunge tanks. So we do thermal cycling. We go back and forth sauna to cold plunge. And it's similar to like the Wim Hof method. We've been taken through the Sherpa method with a friend, and I feel incredible from it. Like it's definitely pushing us out of the comfort zone. This is the next kind of level for us on upping the ante, leveling up, expanding ourselves, getting really out of our comfort zone, because I hate the cold. I had Raynaud's before and it's cured my Raynaud's.
That's crazy.
It's incredible. It's incredible because you learn to tolerate more discomfort.
Yeah, I think what you just said there, you learn to tolerate more discomfort is probably the most important part. Like just forget like the dopamine aspects, like how you feel after, like, any type of immune system boosting effects that it has, which it does. And we can certainly, chat about those things a little bit later. But I just think the most beneficial thing is that you're telling your mind to do something that it doesn't want to do. And then you can transform that. Like, if you're in a really difficult meeting or if you're in a really difficult situation or difficult conversation, you can remember, man, I sat through 3 minutes and fucking ice tank today and I got through it. Like
Yeah.
I can get through this meeting. I can, handle this person who's maybe being like a little bit annoying. Like, do you find that it can sort of help just build that mindset, build that confidence, and sort of build momentum that, you know what, if I can handle a few minutes in the ice, I can handle, my boss yelling at me.
Totally. Yeah. It really does teach you that you are capable of so much more. You are so capable if you just put your mind to it and you breathe. And you do get that dopamine response of like
Absolutely.
that feel good. I did it. I'm really proud of myself. Holy shit. I can do this. Right.
Yeah.
So we get that, that deep teaching.
Yeah.
It's like little kids learning to play and like to challenge themselves to climb a tree. If they always said like, oh no, I won't try that. Or, what if I fall? Or that's kind of scary. That's too high, which is our daily mind chatter around everything. But when that child climbs up to the top of the tree, they feel like king of the world, right? Like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Right. I persevered, I challenged myself, and I get the reward. It's the same thing when we challenge ourselves out of our own comfort zone. And thermal plunging or ice bath plunging is it's a potent way that we can experience that and then receive all of the physiological benefits as well.
Yeah, the physiological benefits are tremendous. And just to get into them just a little bit, like you just mentioned, it's the dopamine spike. I think it's about 2.5 to 6 hours after, which is a pretty long time. So, 6 hours is a big part of your waking day. They're going to have I think it's roughly about a 200% increase in dopamine, which is incredible. And if you don't know what dopamine is, it's a neurotransmitter. It makes you feel good. It's very responsible for motivation and that kind of thing. So, if you don't have enough dopamine, then you do tend to be more unmotivated, less likely to have energy and accomplish things, get things done. So, very important neurotransmitter. But yeah, just coming back to what you said though, just about getting in the tub, I could see it being good for people who have panic attacks, right? Because if you're in a panic situation, what you want to do is you want to get out. Right. Mm-hmm. And so when you get into a cold plunge, immediately right away, your body's like, get out, get out.
Yeah.
I don't want to get out. I don't want to, sit in here. Yeah. But if you can fight through that first minute, then, oftentimes you can last, 2 to even 3 minutes. And a lot of that is just has to do with your breathing and being able to calm down. It basically forces yourself to breathe properly or to accept the situation. Because if you just fight it, then it's just going to get worse.
Yes.
And, we've kind of talked about this before. I think I mentioned last time on the podcast, there was a guy, Barry McDonough, who has this thing. I forget the name of his book now, but he explained that, if you basically try to fight it, then your amygdala just keeps firing, and you're basically just amping up your fight or flight response, and you get more scared. But if you accept it, then your amygdala will start to calm down a bit, and then you can actually, relax and maybe get into a deeper, more calm state. And then the other thing too is just from a physiological perspective with being in the water, is that after about a minute or so, you do develop a little bit of a thermal layer. So sometimes the second and third minute can be, I'm not saying it's way easier, but you do have a little bit of that thermal layer protection. Although I do know there's one company called Cubed, I think they're called, and they have a river flowing through. So as soon as you get in the cold plunge, you turn it on and just starts gushing around. So you get none of that at all. But I'm not saying that that's better or anything like that. I think that, doing the cold plunge regularly is probably, sufficient enough to get all the benefits that we're talking about. It does sound like torture.
Yeah. It does. The water, in the stagnant water, the temperature does change. So even moving your hands down or moving your body or relaxing, leaning back, you are shifting you do feel the temperature shift in that. And that's another challenge of our body goes into that rigid, that protective stance. And so learning to surrender our body and to teach our body a new level of safety is what you're ultimately doing, is you're teaching how to feel safe in discomfort.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. How to feel safe discomfort. That's a real good way to put that.
Yeah, and I went through a lot of flight responses and fight, like because you do challenge the fight flight responses, and your body, like I would jump out of the tub, right, and my body's in flight, or I would push my arms against the tub and I'm fighting it. And so learning to actively relax is the biggest challenge when you're so uncomfortable and you're literally going against what your body's, the primitive response is designed for. So you're actually retraining yourself how to feel different. It's incredible. Yeah. It's so hard. And yet it's the biggest reward, right? The harder you challenge yourself, the bigger the reward.
Have you had like points in your life, like just in like a day where, you know, someone's been annoying or something's been happening when you were like, man, I just did 3 minutes of the ice bath though. I definitely feel like I can handle this right now.
I've had that many times where I'm like, okay, if I can do that, I can handle that later.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that's what helps build confidence and build momentum for people. And I think that, you know, again, like we're not saying that the dopamine aspect isn't a major aspect of it. It is, but I think that it's just like overcoming obstacles is something that, you know, benefits people. And by getting in the cold tub and then getting all the extra, you know, neurotransmitter benefits just kind of duplicates it and makes it even more reason to get in. So that's awesome. With regards to the sauna though, do you ever do like what is your routine with like the sauna and the ice? Like you said, you go back and forth, or how do you like, what's your, like, what do you usually do say in like the run of a week? Like how do you use it?
Depends on how much time I have. Last night I was in the sauna for half an hour and then I did a cold plunge for 3 minutes. If I have quite a bit of time, I'll cycle back and forth. So maybe in the sauna for 20 or 30 minutes and then cold plunge for 1 minute to 3 minutes, back in the sauna and then back in the cold plunge. The goal is always to end on cold. So your body goes into that thermogenesis, like so it heats up faster. And so your body learns to adapt quicker. But when you go back into the sauna, your body's heating up like artificially from the environment. You're using that to heat the body back up. So it's just an interesting experience feeling how cold your blood is moving through you. And so that there's that mindfulness aspect of just witnessing what your body's doing and not being scared of it. And then the sweating, right? The sauna is to get the lymphatic drainage going, is to start moving, start to clear the sweat, right? It's one of our biggest elimination systems in our body. And so when you go into the sauna first, and then, so you get the sweat, you get the lymphatic drainage, and then you go into the cold plunge. I like just to end on cold. I don't like to keep going. That's a challenge for me. Cause then I go in the cold plunge again. Right. But ultimately I do find it gets easier because you start to adapt and it starts to become routine. Like it does get easier and easier, but,
Cool. Well, it sounds like you're definitely utilizing those two things to the maximum. So that's awesome. Kind of jealous of your setup that you have. I have a sauna, but I do get the cold shower. So I kind of get both of it.
Yeah.
Just not quite.
Let's go to the feed store and get a tank.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Pretty cheap way to do it.
Yeah.
So there's, a few other things that I wanted to chat with you about today, but thanks for, letting me know what you're doing with your cold plunges and your saunas. That's super cool. So you've had a couple of very interesting Instagram posts recently. And I wanted to, ask you a little bit about those. One of them in particular is this like abundance versus scarcity that you've talked about. And I really believe in this a lot. So what I mean by that is, that if you do have that abundance mindset, you are going to be more likely to seek opportunities. More people, I think, are going to, understand and recognize your energy and also will reach out and offer you more opportunities. Whereas if you have this scarcity mindset where you're, very fearful, as you kind of put it, people kind of tend to recognize that energy and then you kind of stay there and you never tend to, elevate. And I know that for some people, this can sound a little bit like woo-woo or like hippie-ish, but I think that it's, 100% true. I think that if you do have that abundance, you do have a different mindset. And, when it comes to things like, finances, for example, people will, spend hours and hours thinking about how they can save, $20 or $10 when it's like, why don't you think about how you can make an extra $2,000 a month? Like that's what I'm talking about versus like scarcity versus abundance. And so, when you have patients, do you ever recognize that like this person's sort of living with a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset? Is that something that you sort of tend to recognize in certain individuals?
Yeah. I mean, everything's energy. Our thoughts are energy. Our words are energy. We are energy. And, one of the laws of the universe is law of attraction. So whatever we put out, we receive back. So if we're constantly in a scarcity mindset and we're ruminating over things that worry us, money's going out as fast as it's coming in. I never have enough. Oh my gosh, my bank account's going down, or, oh my gosh, I got to pay this bill. Like if you're always feeding that negative, fearful narrative, you're only attracting the same thing to you. And so shifting our mindset to abundance is recognizing that the world is very abundant. There's so much abundance in so many different ways, in opportunities, in relationships, in love, in kindness, right? There's so much in financial wealth, right? Like there's so much ways that we can receive abundance. And so when we start shifting the internal narrative to, I don't have enough, to I have so much, then we start to see that the energy starts to flow to us differently and that we are open.
Like there's enough for everyone to go around. Like I think people sort of get into this mindset that like, oh, someone else is taking from me. But it's like someone else is just creating their life. They're creating content. They're doing what they're doing. Like it has actually nothing to do with you. If you want to create content, if you want to, move up the scale, move up the chain, you can also do that. You don't necessarily have to think that like, oh, there's only so much pie here and this person's getting a piece of the pie. They're taking my piece and I need to, do what I can and, potentially even tear that person down and hate. I mean, that's where unfortunately a lot of people get to. And it's, it just comes back to like seeing, I think, you choose to be inspired. If you see someone doing something incredible, you shouldn't hate on that person. You should, think, I understand what this person's doing. They're a good example of what I can also do. And I think, that's something that should be, said a lot more as opposed to, the hate that we see, especially online these days.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, that's victim mentality right there, of being like, well, I don't have this and you have that. And you're perpetuating your own stuck state. Whenever you catch yourself speaking as the victim to your circumstances, you are the only one holding yourself there. And I mean, jealousy is a great emotion because it teaches us where we're lacking in our own life. It's showing us where, if that person's doing all these wonderful things and I wish I could be doing that, that jealousy is trying to show you where you can feed your life still. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
I think that's so important what you just said. Like, I do think that feelings of insecurity are teaching you something. Like people think that we shouldn't have feelings of insecurity. That's total bullshit. You should have feelings of insecurity if you see someone else doing something incredible. I'm not saying to compare yourself to others, but what I'm saying is level up. Like if you see someone doing something else, instead of hating on them, try to level up to that. Try to level up to that person. Don't go into your shell and then, hate on someone else or think that you can't do it. Like I do think that jealousy is absolutely, a good emotion in certain ways, and you can use it, to your positive benefit. And I'm sure you've seen that with a lot of your clients.
Yeah. And I mean, every emotion serves a purpose for us. Every emotion is trying to teach us something. So even insecurity, jealousy, they're there to show you how to improve your life. Yeah. If you get stuck in the victim mentality, you're always going to blame other people for your situation though. And how we move to abundance, one is to use other people as inspiration instead of dimming somebody else's light and being critical of somebody else. We can celebrate in their success. We can be happy for them. And that in return, that brings it back into our own life. We have to give in order to receive.
And also too, like if you can be happy for someone else's successes, then that makes you happier as a person. Like if I'm
Yeah.
happier for my successes, but then I'm also happier for your successes
Mhm.
and Emily's successes and whoever else's, then it's like, there's so many different reasons. Now I have more reasons to be happy, so I
Yeah.
think that if you do have that mindset, it can make, a big shift in your life and your mindset. That being said, like someone like, Andrew Tate, I don't know if you're familiar too much with him. It seems like, I guess you are, like, he will say things like, you should feel insecure because you don't have this, or you should feel, this way because you don't have this. And look what I have. And I'm not agreeing with that whatsoever. Like, I think that's ridiculous. I think it's obnoxious. And I don't think it's like helpful for other people. But at the same time, when he's saying something like that, if you do feel like feelings of insecurity, like do something about it. Like it doesn't mean that you still can't, have the opinion that, you maybe don't like Andrew Tate, or you don't like the things that he's saying and that kind of thing. But if he's making you feel a certain way, that is teaching you something to a certain degree. Like,
Yeah.
it looks like
Yes.
you agree with me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody listens to anybody and they get triggered by something that somebody says, it's an opportunity for self-growth and self-reflection. We easily project our own criticisms and insecurities onto other people through judgment, and when we criticize or we bring somebody else down. The challenge, though, is really looking inwards and saying, well, why did that stir up something inside me? And what is that? Is that something that I need to heal, or I need to address, or is that something I need to improve within myself?
And if you can, and maybe you can't because of confidentiality reasons, but can you think of like an example where this may have come up when in your practice, where someone did feel like they had like some feelings of insecurity, and maybe you had to say to them, listen, like these are not bad feelings. Like these are feelings that show you that you need to do something about it. Like this is showing you that you need to change.
Yeah, every day, every conversation. Even in my own life, like it shows up everywhere for us because we are just mirrors of each other. We're reflecting back to each other where, if I'm having a conversation just with a complete stranger and I talk about something that's, that I believe in, or something that I'm doing, and they start to get their back up against the wall because maybe that I'm reflecting back to them where they're, stagnant in their own life. And they might start to be like, well, they might make a critical statement because they don't want to address something happening within themselves.
Yeah. I understand that. And also too, that, brings me up to medication a little bit, because say if you are feeling depressed, or you're not feeling well, and then you take an SSRI and you feel better. So that may be helpful, but also too, if you look at it another way, what if those feelings of inadequacy were supposed to get you to change your life, to make a shift and to do something different? And then because you took a pill that made you feel better without making those shifts, then you kind of just reverberate to the same space. And maybe the pill makes you feel better for a few months, but then later on, because you didn't have those feelings of depression, and because you didn't make those shifts and changes, you're kind of back to the same place. And again, I'm not saying that, nobody should be on an SSRI and SSRIs have no value. I just think that what I just described does happen to certain people.
All the time. Yeah. I think it doesn't address the root cause. Right? It doesn't address the root cause. And the reason, again, every emotion has a role, even depression. When we feel depressed, it's because we're moving the furthest away from like our heart, like what our heart's trying to show us, guide us in the right direction. It's like a person that does a job that they hate and they start to get depressed. Okay. Which happens a lot because they're all the time. Right. And and then it gets worse and worse. And then they might self-medicate with alcohol or weed or whatever they need to do because they just are trying to cope. But at the end of the day, their heart is aching because this is not what they're supposed to be doing. There's a higher calling for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you just hit the nail on the head right there. I think that with regards to like feeling, depressed or feeling anxious or just having any, negative emotions. I know some people don't like to label emotions as negative, but having, unpleasant emotions, I guess we'll say, it doesn't necessarily mean that you made the right decision because you took a pill and now you don't have those unpleasant emotions again. I mean, sometimes that can be the case, but there's other times I think when you do need to say, okay, why am I depressed? And then make some changes because of that. Whereas like if you just make the change solely based upon the medication, then it doesn't give you the opportunity to ever really make those changes. Now, when would it be helpful? Like, I could potentially see it being helpful if you just were so depressed that you couldn't get out of bed and you needed some kind of motivation to get you up to do those things. So like you're at a baseline level where, even when you're feeling depressed, you can't get up and go. Some people like to call something called like functional depression. I don't know if, I'm still sort of teasing that out, whether, I really believe in it or not in some ways. I mean, I think in some ways you have to have functional depression because you have to be able to function even when you're not feeling at your best, right? I mean, that's just, I think, being an adult in some ways and being responsible. You have to be able to function when you're not at your best.
All emotions can be functional. We can we can be functionally nervous.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And I won't go too far off, but I do remember there was an Instagram thing I saw recently on like men's health for this month. And, it says, your feelings matter. And it's like, okay, like, yes, your feelings do matter, but it doesn't matter how you feel if you have to do something. Like if if I feel terrible, but I have a child coming in and they have a really sore throat, it doesn't matter how I feel. I still have to be able to look into that child's throat, see some pus and prescribe them an antibiotic if they do see pus, so, and it's like, if if something happens, but to you, but 10 minutes before you have one of your clients, but that client is really dependent upon you, again, I'm not saying your feelings don't matter at all, but in that particular situation, your feelings don't matter to that client. You have to do what you have to do to.
You still have a job.
Yeah, you still have a job. You still have to like recognize that. And so I think, again, with this like men's mental health thing, like there's a little bit too much of like, it's okay to, take a break and not do your job when you should be, and I think that if we can make a shift by, telling people that like, it's not, we're saying that your feelings don't matter at all, but if you have a job to do, you do have to have coping strategies and mechanisms so that you can, deal with those feelings and still continue to do what you're doing.
If we said to everybody, you don't have to do anything hard because you're feeling big emotions right now, we're just teaching people not to cope and not to adapt. We are not doing any service. It's like saying to my daughter we were driving the golf cart the other day and she didn't want to drive in a certain way because she started to get scared. And if I just said, okay, I'll drive, even though this is something that she's done many times before, but she was letting her fear, like her internal dialogue, get the best of her. She was doing worst case scenarios. And if I didn't say, no, you can do it. You can do it. I know that you can do it. And I'm going to help you persevere. And she did. She drove the golf cart in one spot. Anyways, if I said, no, it's okay, don't worry, then I'm feeding poor coping. I'm feeding this internal narrative that, if it gets hard, don't do it.
Yeah. And this comes back to like when we were talking about climbing, you had mentioned something about climbing the tree at the beginning of the episode. And I meant to kind of interject there and I didn't, but it reminds me of what I was going to say. So like when someone's climbing a tree, the parents will often say to them, like, don't fall, which is like,
fall. You're going to, you learn. That's how you learn.
Right. But it's also too, it puts them right away that like fear. Whereas if you say like, grab the branch and then grab the next branch and then grab the next branch. It's like you're giving them direction on how to do it properly versus telling them to like panic,
right?
So I think that can make a big difference for certain people as well.
Yeah, it's how parents project their fear onto their kids, and that's how the internal narrative starts.
Yeah. So do you ever find then that, like, when people say, because, we can certainly talk with this with nutrition as well, but like people will say that, like, I'm fearful or I'm depressed, so that's why my kid is fearful and that's why they're depressed, where it's like, maybe you are passing along some genes. I'm not saying genes don't have anything to do with, your mental health, your health. Clearly they do. But at the same time, we also know that your environment makes a massive difference as well. So I think that, a lot of times when they say that they're passing on, genetics of depression or anxiety, really they're actually just passing on those particular habits. And I think that if you can make the shift, like you said, to, get out of it, like scarcity of like, and, don't fall off the tree versus grab the branch, you can make a big difference overall.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think most parents, when they project their own issues onto their kids and then they say, well, they're having issues with this or they're doing this, parents always have to look inwards and realize that the child, again, is a mirror reflection of themselves. So if the child has a problem with anger, look inwards and say, well, how do I manage my own anger? How do I show up when I'm angry? Does it look the same? Because most of the time we're just showing our children how to respond to tough situations. We're teaching them how to cope, how to feel their emotions or not feel their emotions. We're teaching them how to manage difficult situations every day by what we say and how we suggest things and even how we live. So your life is your medicine, ultimately. How you live, how you speak, how you eat, how you move, who you spend time with. It's all encompassing. So to label something as it's so generic as like, well, I just have anxiety. Let's look at like how you're living and let's look at like how you're coping.
Yeah. And just like, with nutrition, if someone's going to be eating a terrible diet and then, their offspring is also eating a terrible diet, then it's probably the diet that's causing the health issues, not the genetics. And I think the same can be said about depression and anxiety. Like if you're someone who, you don't get any sun, you don't get any exercise, you don't do any socializing, you don't do all the things like pro behaviors that would, eliminate or at least reduce depression and anxiety. Like if you don't do those things and then your son or daughter doesn't do those things, of course they're going to look like you. Of course you're going to say that it's because of genetics, but really it's more because of the things that you're doing and the things that you could control that you do not control or you choose not to control.
Yeah, I think if the moment we label something and label ourselves as something, we're boxing ourselves into being stuck and being as a victim.
Cop out too.
You got it. Yeah. And I do believe that every dis-ease is an emotional, like, I think it comes down to where am I, like a trauma, something that I experienced in my life that was really hard that I haven't healed from. Something that part of me that I don't want to look at, like our shadow side, like we don't want to look at parts of, something we've done in our life or something we've been through. We don't want to acknowledge those things. Well, that
you don't
festers.
Acknowledge the dark side. Like we all have a dark side and we don't want to acknowledge it.
Yeah. They're the shadows. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, there's things that are probably, like I feel like they're very healthy, but some people may feel like there's certain things that are like, dark about me because, I'm obsessed with MMA. I love doing it all the time. And, obviously it's a very, very violent sport. And, I do listen to like a lot of rap, like a lot of like old school gangster rap kind of stuff. And like, but I have recognized too that like someone say like Jocko Willink or Ryan Holiday, like Andrew Huberman, like all three of those guys, they all listen to like metal. Now I hate metal. Like I don't like metal at all. Maybe a little bit of Metallica every now and then, but like it's just not my thing. I never got into it. But those three people, like I think they're, amazing people. So Andrew Huberman, if you don't know, if everyone listens, he's an incredible scientist online. He's got an amazing podcast. I think you'd absolutely love him, Jen. Like he's wicked. Ryan Holiday is a daily stoic guy. I'm not sure who else I mentioned there. Jocko Willink. He's the guy who gets up at 4:30 every day and takes a picture of his watch. He's a U.S. Navy SEAL. So all these guys are really highly functioning people. They're all really come across as very nice people. They all contribute a lot to society. But I think that part of the reason why all those people are successful is because they have confronted their dark side. Like they understand it, and they understand that they have, emotions sometimes, so they want to do things that, they shouldn't do, but they're able to understand it. And instead of just, completely suppressing their emotions, they just, understand them, and then they behave in a way that's, professional and diplomatic, as opposed to, being unprofessional and acting out, hastily or irrationally in certain situations and making things worse.
Well, I guess that's healthy coping, because you can feel your emotions, but you can still do your daily things. And if you're feeling heavy stuff, you go and you carve out time to process and move energy through you. And everybody copes in different ways, and certain music helps people feel certain things too. So that's also why people are drawn to certain types of music. Music's the energy, it's frequency, and it meets you at your frequency. So, I think also like MMA for men, like that's very like primitive. Like that's also, like a masculine way of healing your own body. And like, I wouldn't suggest you go and, do yoga. I would say, yeah, go hit MMA, like go and do something very physical especially for men. Men and women are super different. And so your coping and adaptations are also very different.
I'm so glad you said that as well, because I do think that men and women heal very differently, and they do need different therapies.
Yeah.
And I think that, obviously I would think that for maybe not for every man, but for a lot of men, I think going to, jiu-jitsu or doing MMA probably would be more beneficial overall than, say, going to a yoga class.
Yes.
And, it's just not very many therapists would say something like that. So it's just very, very comforting to like hear someone actually say it.
You should watch Sacred Sons and what they're doing. I think they're the original members are Polynesian, and they came from Hawaii, and they are doing a lot of sacred men's circles or men's healing. But a lot of it's like fighting. It's like yelling. It's like very primal. And it's all around healing the divine masculine. And, like some of like my clients that are men, I'll be like, what are you doing physically? And if they're not doing anything physically, I'll be like, you need to go, like, you got to use your arms. You got to use your arms. You need to go lift weights. You need to go chop wood. You got to move that energy though. But that's building up in your body. And I wouldn't suggest that same thing for women. I'd suggest different things for women, because we operate and move energy differently.
I think that for men, the opposite of depression is feeling power. But for women, the opposite of depression is not feeling power. It's more just feeling loved and feeling safe and feeling secure.
Yeah, and creation. And being in creation. Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too. Like, going into the divine feminine and trying to create like whatever it is that they want to do. Like, I know, for example, like in my house, like Emily wanted to put up the Christmas decorations in November. Like that's what she wants to do, and I understand that. Some of my friends gave me a hard time, like, oh, you should put your foot down on that. I'm like, I don't care. Like it makes her happy, so it makes me happy. And I really don't care if I have Christmas decorations up for, a month earlier than everyone else, because I recognize that this is her energy and this is what makes her happy. And so, I'm going to let her do that. Yeah.
You should tell your friends, happy wife, happy life.
Happy wife, happy life. That is a line that I think will always ring true, always, no matter what. So just shifting gears a little bit, because God, I can't believe we're already 45 minutes into this. I had a few other things that I wanted to ask you about there today. But you made a really good post too, and actually reminded me of something that Aubrey Marcus had posted a while ago as well. You said, let the old version of yourself die. And, for me in particular, like I come from a small town, like I'm from St. John's, Newfoundland, and I love Newfoundland. I think it's the best place, ever. I was just back there with Emily. We loved it. We're going back
Beautiful.
there again. And, but I do find that, people in smaller towns, sometimes more than bigger cities, tend to hold on to like old memories and old times, and maybe not tend to like shift into the new, and they don't necessarily see what they could become or what they could do with their life if they just kind of like let go of the past a little bit. And do you ever find that with your clients, you see that they're trying to like hold on to their old life instead of just trying to create a new one? And it comes down to that saying, I'm not sure who said it, but depressed people live in the past, anxious people live in the future, and happy people live in the present. And if you want to create new good memories, new good old times, then you have to be able to live in the present, because when you did have when you were in the good old days, so to speak, you were living in the present, and at that time you weren't reminiscing about the good old days previously to that.
Yeah, this is a great topic to bring up, because when we are constantly healing, when we are evolving and becoming the healthier, happier version of ourselves, what happens is maybe like old versions of us start to die off because we no longer resonate with, old habits, old patterns, old ways of coping, old ways of being, because we're learning, we're growing, we're expanding ourselves. And anybody who is in your life, or even family, small town mentality, I get it. I'm from a small town as well. Anybody who says, oh, you've changed in a negative way, that they are holding on to resistance of their own growth then, because they have a hard time celebrating who you are continuing to evolve into. Evolving's good. Evolving's growing. And if people have a hard time with that, it's because there's fear in change, and learning to find safety and comfort in the evolution of ourselves means that you have to be outside of your comfort zone, and it challenges our ego, because our ego is what holds our identity. It's what holds us in this state. And anybody who isn't able to see your growth as a good thing, or the evolution of who you are constantly changing, will only see you as who you were back then, because they can't tolerate who you are now.
Accepting change, I think, is very difficult to do in general. It's for whatever reason, you probably know a little bit better than me. People just tend to want to, not change and hold on to things. And I guess it's because it's more comforting to do that. But in reality, if you do that, you are going to create more discomfort in the long term. And you do need to embrace change. So how do you, it got to be so difficult, but like, what's the best starting place for someone if they are, if they do feel like they're stuck, if they do feel like they're not, embracing change and they're resisting it, like what's kind of the first step to get over that hump?
Well, I would start with self-inquiry as to, why are you scared? Where's the fear? Where's that rooted from?
Yeah.
And it's usually it's just fear. And, we always want to have control over things, because it gives us this feeling that that we're safe. If I know, if I can predict, if I know how my day is going to go, if I know what's coming down the pipeline, then I feel safe. Right? Yeah. The truth is that's just an illusion. Yeah. We don't have control over anything except, the words that we say, how we take care of ourselves, and like what we think and how we feel. Like that's all that we have control of. We have no control over anything else.
Yeah. I think too, it's, a lot of it comes down to worrying what other people will think or what the outcome of it will be. Like, say, if you wanted to, even if you want to like post something online, like you're talking about, like why, you wouldn't post it. It's like, oh, I'm scared of what people think. Okay, well, what people? Like, right. Be like specific. Okay, break it down to the person. Okay, what do you think this specific person is going to say? Like, how is this going to like impact your life? And then by the time you like get down to it, it's like, okay, so you didn't do this because one person might do this small thing or might have this small comment to make because of it. And it's like, that's crazy. Like, look how much fear is holding you back. Like, you're not pursuing something just because of one person may say something one time. And I can tell you that if you do get over that, it doesn't have to be a post. It can be, walking up to someone, or it can be, going for a job, whatever it is. As soon as you do that, and this comes back a little bit to the dopamine thing again, you will create momentum, and then you're going to want to do the next thing. So, you need to get over that hump. And then once you get over the hump, understand that you will have momentum going, you will have dopamine going, but just getting over that one hump, getting over that one obstacle can just be, so difficult for people at first.
Yeah. Fear is an inhibiting emotion. It prevents us from moving forward. I was saying with my family this morning, you have to run towards your fear. You have to do the things that scare you, because that's where your liberation is.
Yeah. And it's so funny too. So I remember Barry McDonough, it's the dare response. And he says, that's what he says. He says, run towards fear. And again, coming back to science and the amygdala thing, like when you run towards fear, your amygdala, that part of your brain that's like telling you that you're, in a fight, that just goes away when you run towards it. And it's just like if you're in a physical fight and someone hits you and then you wince, they know then to go in for the kill. And that's what happens when you're having a panic attack. Like if you start to get panicked and then you start to say, oh my God, no, I don't want this to happen. Then that's your brain saying, okay, let's go in for the kill and smash it. And then you have this, terrible panic attack. Whereas if you say like, bring on the fear. I want it. I want more anxiety. And in that situation, you can actually dissipate the fear because you're attacking back. Like in the physical fist fight, when you've been hit, what you want to do is you want to attack back. You don't want to someone keep hitting you. But when you're sitting there saying, fear don't come. Oh
no.
It's like saying someone don't hit me when you're in a fight. It's not, they're going to keep hitting you. So I think that, I'm happy that we brought that up and that you brought that up, because, I think if people understand that, they can use that as a technique when they are in a fearful situation, so, bring it on. If you want to learn more about this method, like I said, Dare from Barry McDonough is the guy that I learned it from.
Yeah, that's great. I always just say to my clients, take baby steps. It's like exposure therapy. Just you work gradually up, and every time you challenge yourself and then you learn it's okay, your body does like this recalibration and goes like, oh, I can do that. Okay. And then so now it's learned that. So now it's ready to go to the next level, and you just keep leveling up. Okay. Actually, funny thing around that. I have, so we have a cow, and she's a Holstein. So we were going to get her pregnant to be able to milk her. Turns out, that was our goal. That was the plan. Anyways, we had the semen truck come, and we were going to do like IVF for cows.
The semen truck. That's hilarious.
That's what they called it. Anyways, turns out she doesn't have a cervix or a fallopian tube. So we can't get her pregnant because she was, a twin at birth with a bull. That bull took, more of the hormones or growth hormones or something from her. So she didn't fully develop her reproductive organs. Funny thought though around this, my wife brought this up and said, it's funny because a female cow without a cervix, without her reproductive organs, is still female. And
okay.
Same with the male being pinched, it's still a male. Anyways, side note. So now we're on this conversation of, well, maybe we should get buffalo and actually use buffalo milk, because we've been drinking buffalo. And the difference between a cow and buffalo, energetically, is that cows get really scared. Cows get spooked really easily and run from their fear. Buffalo run towards the fear. So if a storm's coming, the buffalo run towards the storm to get to the other side.
Oh,
and cows run away. And so they're constantly stressed the whole time.
Interesting.
And we are what we eat.
So you think that by eating more buffalo instead of cows, we may be less stressed?
I don't know. We've been drinking buffalo milk for a while, and I'm like, maybe it's doing some good for us. I don't know.
I know it's super lean. The meat of buffalo is really mean. I've had some buffalo sausages before, and I love buffalo. I think it's an awesome meat. I actually didn't know that you could get buffalo. You said you got buffalo milk?
Yeah, we've been drinking buffalo milk, cream, yogurt, cheese. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I have to get Emily to bring me home to sample.
Yeah.
So I know we have a few minutes left, and there was one topic that I did want to cover before we end things here. So, I am in the LGBT community. There's obviously a lot of people like yourself who kind of feel that, like, you know what, I don't want to be part of this community kind of thing. Like everything that's going on, like I'm doing me and I'm good where I am. I'm okay with, how I'm being treated in society, but I'm not okay with, I don't like, it's almost like you're being forced that you have to have these other trans values, or you have to believe that, like, people should be on puberty blockers and that kind of thing. And I feel that, a lot of people who are in the, I guess we'll say the LGB community without the other letters, feel the same way. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of gays, lesbians, bisexuals, whatever, that don't align with a lot of what the long alphabet movement is pushing. I guess any movement that pushes somebody else to feel a certain way or think a certain way, forcing other people to abide by your beliefs, is bullying. And I don't align with bullying.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because I do think it is bullying in a certain degree, and I think too, like the statistics show that I think something like 80 to 90% of people who identify as transgender in their teens just end up being gay, something like that. Is that correct?
Yep, I've heard that too. Yeah, and a lot of the percentage of transitioners is higher. Like mental health issues are even higher.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, before we kind of jump the gun and make these like drastic changes to someone's health and to their organs, and, sometimes when people undergo these surgeries and they're never able to have children again, there's a lot of things that are going on there. And so, I think that if we are going to, look at this as a whole, then we need to look at it as, separate it. Like, I think that, LGB needs to be separated from everything else. And I appreciate what, you're saying today. And I think that a lot of people in your community would appreciate what you're saying as well. Cause it's like, you guys are forcing us to take on these values that we never, ever wanted to have, or ever wanted to say, or ever did have ourselves.
Yeah, this is really interesting in our area. In the municipality, there was a town hall meeting, and the local school, the public school, people were upset because they wanted them to fly the LGBTQ flag, the pride flag. And the locals, it's all farming community. They said, no, we don't want to do that. And somebody in our area invited a whole bunch of people from Toronto to the town hall meetings. And they got there early, filled up the town hall meeting to protest the flag. They wanted the flag up. And so that locals couldn't even be part of the town hall meeting.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it was a town hall meeting, but most of the people who were in the town hall were not from the town. They were from Toronto.
Yes, to fight for the pride flag.
Yeah, that's obviously, it's just like a waste. You know what I mean? Like, you should be like working on something else, like find something else to do that's like more productive than to come to someone else's town and like, protest to put up like a pride flag. It's just like, at some point it's just like, get a life.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like if your pride flag is up, that it's not equality, because then the heterosexual flag should be up too. Then everybody's being treated equally. Like, I don't.
I totally get it. It's the same thing where it's like, Black Lives Matter. It's all lives matter.
All lives matter.
All lives matter.
Yeah. Anything that's divisional, that gets us fighting against each other, isn't good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I really appreciate your point on that, especially, given your background and everything. So we're just running out of time there now, Jen. Can you tell people where they can find you online, where they can potentially contact you for your services and everything else you want to share?
Sure. My Insta is The Sovereign Therapist. My wife and I have a podcast called the Black Sheep Podcast. That's on Instagram or on Spotify and iTunes. The link's in my bio. We're contemplating the name change because apparently there's a lot of the Black Sheep podcasts out there. So if anybody listens, we're open to suggestions. My wife came up with 2 dykes and a cow, but I don't, I don't know.
Well, I kind of got the shaft on that too, because I came up with Hart2Heart, and then I don't know how many months it was later, Kevin Hart also called his show Hart2Heart. So it's, TV podcast is not the best thing to do sometimes.
Sorry.
Anyway, Jen, it's all good. It's all good. I love doing the podcast, and I love chatting with you today. It's been awesome, Jen. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of your wisdom and all of the things that you have to share. I really appreciate it. And thank you again so much for listening, everybody. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I will be back again next week.